Hi, welcome to a brand new episode and a brand new season of Inwward Bound for Mindful Living. I'm Shavin Bandaranaike. Due to popular demand, since last year we did several episodes on mindfulness with the ever so omnipresent Mr. Deepa Surarachi.
Thank you, Shavin. And we have been saying we must live in this moment.
Absolutely.
So if you are reflecting, are we living in this moment?
Very good question.
And so what we are doing is we are reflecting or we are recalling, we are looking back 2017 in this moment. I think that's the most interesting thing. When we think of past, at this moment when you are thinking of past, we get the feeling that we are in that past. But really we are not in that past. We are recalling the past now. So what we are doing now is we are recalling the past, but we are doing it now.
So we are incorporating into our lives now,
Yes,
but not really going there.
not really going there,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting things is when we recall past. When I say past, don't think of the whole last year, just think of the this morning. What are the things we will remember? I think most of the time we remember the highlights. And when we recall past incidents, sometimes we don't see the full picture. Some of the circumstances that were around that moment, we may not even remember. For example, you would have had a moment where you were rude to somebody. Now, we might remember that I was rude to that person, but what caused that irritation at that moment, we might even not remember. Maybe you were so tired because of so many things that happened that day. You were so thirsty. It can be something simple like that. Or you would have had a little grain of sand in your shoe and it was irritating you, and that's the one that caused you to be nasty to somebody. Now that is the problem with when we are trying to recall and reflect the past.
You remember the outcome as opposed to the rationale.
You might either remember the outcome, you might remember some parts of the moment, not the full.
Out of context,
So therefore, it's not a very good recall, very good, how do I say it? It's not a complete picture. Right? And sometimes when you look at things that happened in the past, especially when things are bad, things went wrong, we tend to give ourselves a lot of negative points, and we are generally very harsh on us, isn't it?
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done that, things like that. And I remember once a doctor asked eminent teacher, Venerable Ajahn Brahmali, when he was in Sri Lanka, this surgeon said, Venerable Sir, sometimes when we perform certain surgeries, when we come home, we think, oh, I should have done that, or I should have done it better this way, or something like that. And then if it has got complications, he feels sorry. Then he said, no, then only he explained this whole concept of saying, you will never recall the full moment, because in that moment there are so many things. Now, for example, you and I, when we are watching this program again, right, we will not remember every little detail of this moment.
Yeah.
Right? The temperature of the studio, the lightings and all these things, we will not even think.
Correct.
Right? Unless it has a significant emphasis.
Yeah.
For example, if the lighting is too harsh, then you might say, that is a little too harsh. But there are many moments where we don't remember this.
Yeah.
Then when we look at what happened to us, it's important to ask, more importantly, what did I learn from that? You know, I think learning is the most difficult thing to do. Why I say that is, if we learn, we would definitely change our behavior accordingly. Right? So most of the time we don't learn.
It's something that will be innate and it will come into us. I need to interrupt you there though, because this is definitely something we need to recall and track back to in the next segment. But we'll take a very quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inward Bound for Mindful Living. We are with Mr. Deepal Surarachi. We just had a discussion earlier about how we don't necessarily see the full picture, Mr. Surarachi. We see bits and pieces there. So shall we continue on that?
Yes. Then what we are trying to say is, that's why I think sometimes we don't even really learn. Because in looking at situations, because we don't see the full picture, we don't get to understand exactly what happened and what probably the learning point from that. Right? So this is where the practice of mindfulness becomes useful, even in this simple reflection.
Right.
And because normally when we look at things that happened, more often than not, we look at it from my point of view.
Okay.
And when I look at it from my point of view, I'm already conditioned to see it the way I want.
It's very biased towards yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you practice mindfulness, what happens is you learn this art of looking at things from far. Which you always say is like out of body experience. Then you kind of being honest. What was in my thoughts at that time? What was my intentions? You know. Then it becomes very clear, I behaved in this manner because of this intention.
So do you then equate much more depth and in terms of importance to that why aspect of it rather than what the outcome was itself?
Exactly.
Right.
Because sometimes even seemingly positive things that you do, you might see underneath in that positive behavior, there is some different ulterior motive. Sometimes those are needed in normal day-to-day life, but what I'm trying to say is what appears is not exactly what the intention is. Right? I don't know whether I related this story last time. I remember once that was I had just bought my first car many years ago as a young executive, and I was driving opposite the accident ward, the new accident ward. And then I saw a man in crutches walking with a lot of difficulty. Then I stopped the car. I got him into the car and then turned back and took him back to where he was going, to the orthopedic division or whatever. Now, having done that, I was driving back and I was thinking to myself, you know, I did something really good. Not many would give a lift to to an unknown person in your new car, you know, that kind of thing. Then I realized that was extra, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? You see, if I just allow it to happen and I did that, then that is okay.
Yeah.
The moment I started trying to put value into it from me, then I think I probably got 10 marks and I lost about 6 marks. Similarly, when we do something bad, right, say you lose your temper with somebody, and of course you rationalize and say it is very reasonable. Actually, we never get angry if it is not unreasonable.
Yes. You try to justify it later on. This is why this happened.
So
Yeah,
that's what
true.
I'm trying to say, that unless you can create that space between you and phenomena, you'll always look at things from a very strong bias of you. It's very then you don't learn.
Yeah.
Most of the time we have been taught by various people, not only teachers, you know. Somebody would say, I remember, you probably don't know, we had these overhead projectors. Now when I say overhead projectors, not these overhead projectors, these were there was a big lamp, and then you put a transparent sheet on that,
Okay.
and what is on the transparent sheet get projected to the screen.
Gets
Right?
projected overhead. Yes.
That is projected over my head. That's what I call overhead projector. And I remember once I was pointing something on the transparency with my finger. Now, one of my colleagues in the audience later said, Deepal, don't do it, because when you keep your finger, it gets so enlarged on that, it looks more like a sausage. So always either use a pointer or a pen.
Right.
Now, see, a simple thing like that,
Yeah.
right? Because that person look at it dispassionately.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? I would never see it.
Because I think what you're trying to communicate then, Mr. Suraj, is that if you're outside of that whole realm, when you see two other people sort of interacting in a certain way, you are able to manifestly be objective about it. But then if it's about you,
Yes.
99% of people, you don't
All
not
of
be
us,
able to.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, yes.
So that's why you're trying to foster that sort of habit where you can look at yourself objectively rather than having to be very subjective about it, which is, I think, innate in us though, right? We tend to be biased about ourselves.
I think that's natural. That's natural. So, so am I saying that being mindful is unnatural? No, I think being mindful is natural.
Yeah.
Right. But we have forgotten it, and therefore we are thinking this unmindful is natural.
And so at the end of the day, then what you're suggesting is that we need to go back to like our true selves. We become somebody else, like because of what has happened around us, like society at large.
I think when you're when you are not mindful, you are not your true self. You always wear different garbs on you, and you think you are that.
Right. Okay.
Right? But what mindfulness does is it really opens all these out and get you to see yourself straight in the mirror. That gives you insights. Then you know, this is why I felt like this. This is why I did like this, you know. That is the point where you think you can take a call on that and say, will I do it again if I were to do it?
Whether we can learn from it, basically.
Exactly.
I actually have a question for you, but that will have to wait till the next segment though, Mr. Suryaji. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inward Bound for Mindful Living. Mr. Suraj, we left the last segment the fact that I have a question for you. And I think we began also with reflections and how exactly reflections aren't about the then but the now. So what I want to actually find out is how is it that we can utilize mindfulness to look at what we've done in the past year, understand what we need to improve on and take with us, and what we need to let go of, keep behind and move forward.
Simply, if we look at what make us happy, what make us feeling fulfilled, I think those are the things that we need to keep doing. And if we felt that anything that we did didn't really make us happy, make us feel fulfilled, pick one of them and see whether you can incorporate that, into a way that, okay, next time I will be a little bit more mindful on that. Let me share with you what I learned last year.
Please.
I had to host a Japanese friend who was visiting us, and we went out for a meal. And then at the end of the dinner, this restaurant manager asked whether he can write something in the visitor's book. So he wrote these 2 Japanese characters. I asked, what did you write? He said, Ichigo Ichie. I asked, what does that mean? Then he said, Ichigo Ichie means 1 life, 1 meeting. I asked, what does that mean? Then he said, the traditional Japanese thinking was at that time, very in those days, that when somebody meets another person, the guest thinks that we might not meet again. The host also thinks maybe we might not meet again.
Right.
As a result, both of them give 100% to each other. What a powerful concept,
absolutely.
right? And that really changed my thinking. And ever since, whenever I go for a meal outside, now I keep my phone upside down, because I want to give 100% to the person, and I use it very often to remember the importance of this moment. Now, that for me was a most important learning that I had last year. Ichigo Ichie, 1 life, 1 meeting. So I give 100% to you this moment, because we don't know whether we might have a similar moment. And this moment will never get repeated.
Yeah, it will never come back.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that's an interesting way to look at. And another story, a friend of mine, I think we told this story in the last season, but it doesn't matter. Good stories are good stories. This guy was he get really annoyed when people come behind and toot. And he said one day he thought, okay, why don't I let him go? But he followed him, and he followed this vehicle from Vattala, and he came all the way, and then where did this other car stopped? In front of a hospital, and from that they took a patient. Ever since, he never get worried or annoyed when somebody toots the horn from the behind. He thinks the other person must be having an emergency that I don't know, so he let him go. Now, wasn't it a fantastic lesson?
Yeah, to give the other person the benefit of the doubt whenever you have the opportunity.
Yeah, because I don't know, he must be more urgent, and this is the speed that I can go. If I'm happy with my speed, then let him go.
Yes.
And then I, of course, added some things to it. If a bus driver toots, I say that is 200 times, because in the bus there are about 150 people. So it's 150 into 1 urgency, right? So in a car you have only 3 urgencies maximum. Right? So when you change the attitude towards things, then what happens? It becomes simple. And so that's the kind of things that we can incorporate into life, and don't think of changing a whole lot. It doesn't happen. Take a small thing and keep doing it.
Correct.
Until it becomes part of you.
This whole concept, Mr. Suryachi, of every year, I think a lot of us do this, and a lot of us don't keep to it as well.
Yeah.
New Year resolutions, right? You tend to, it's not really a reflection. It's just that every year you tend to think, I'm going to do X number of things by the end of the year.
Yes.
So I saw interesting posts online as well, where there's a person whose resolutions were to fulfill the resolutions of the previous year. So every year it gets accumulated or procrastinated on. So how do you manifestly maybe connect mindfulness to that aspect?
remember we talked about this rapid last year, probably we can talk about in another episode. And these 5 hindrances are the ones that really keep us away from doing things, right? And secondly, sometimes some of the things that we think that we want to do are not necessarily so urgent and important, and you are not passionate about it. If it is passionate and important, you will somehow find time. And sometimes we try to do so many things, thinking that that the year has so much. I remember those days when whenever I go overseas, my colleagues used to remind me, Deepal, you are going out only for a week, right? And you go and attend to whatever you attend there. Don't start sending emails to us because we have things to do. Right?
Yeah.
Because when you are away on a program and overseas, your perspective is different. You want so many things happen in the office.
Yeah.
Right.
So you tend not to really be focused on one thing. You tend to bring everything else into the picture as well, right? Yeah, I can completely relate to that, Mrs. Suraji.
That's what happened. We think we can do so much, but in reality, we may not have the time to do it in that year. So let's figure out what are the most important things and the ones that we can really do.
Now, I think it's a good opportunity also. Some of the things that we discussed in the last episode, last season rather, as you said, good stories are good stories. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you forget about it and finish it off. You can always incorporate it in life. But I think from most of the viewers that actually spoke to us post last season, what they always wanted was, besides just the theoretical aspects and the stories that we talk about, to also see practically how this can be incorporated into their lives. I think we had a discussion on this previously as well. How do you think we can incorporate that into this season, into the episodes that we do?
Yeah, why don't we try to do a 2 minutes of practice?
Absolutely.
And sometimes we think that we want to do mindfulness, right? It doesn't happen like that. You become mindful. And then we see how the mind behaves. And we don't force our mind and say, you come back and now stay here. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You allow it to settle down. And why don't we try 2 minutes
Absolutely.
of that now?
Yeah.
We just see whether we can relax in our body, how we are seated, and you can do it while listening to us. Just feel the whole body on the chair, all the sensations, and allow the body to relax. As you relax the body, try to see whether there are any thoughts in your mind. Allow them to come and go without suppressing them. As you become silent, you might notice that you are breathing, and just observe the breath, how it comes and how it goes. Take another deep breath. While exhaling, open your eyes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suraji. We hope that the remainder of your week is as mindful as the 30 minutes that you've spent with us. So until the next time that we see, good luck.